You could play your new Call of Duty computer game that looks like this, or you could play this one that got a hammer fist to the gut, rocketing it back over a decade, receiving a coating of paint that would make a grandma shrivel up and croak. Black Ops 3 on the 360 has to be one of the worst graphical looking games on the console, without a doubt. It's truly a miracle to have a video game from 2015 look as horrendous as this one does. Call of Duty 2, that was a launch title for the Xbox 360 in 2005, is looking more like a baddie than the hot new toy. I get that the 360 and PS3 were still being supported during this 2015 timeframe, since not everyone had an Xbox One or PS4 yet, but if it's really going to run as grody as this does, struggling to crank out 60 FPS when every COD previously runs at that frame rate, and has unfinished, janky reload and movement animations, releasing it to the public is definitely a question that needs an answer, especially when it's not even a completed product. The campaign is not included in this version, which maybe isn't that big of a deal. It was written by chat Black Ops 3 anyways, having the sensibility shown by monkeys when you toss them a copy of Elmo's Letter Adventure. So you're really not missing out on much with a story that hardly makes any sense. It's just more in the perspective of selling a game for $49.99 when this is the quality they're getting, along with slicing a part of it off. The only modes you can play is multiplayer and zombies, with Zambles being the magnum opus for gaming fans across both the Seven Seas and the Milky Way. It was the Vijay that propelled last-gen Richthofen into the world, with him being built how any and all men wish they looked. A barely recognizable face smudged onto a canvas, black eyes, and having movement like a waterboarded robot. He looks like the fucking devil. I'm just waiting for his head to start spinning around and spewing puke everywhere at this point. It's shocking he was never used as a way to make the story more interesting in the zombie world. Like, maybe he could have been the reason the Shadows of Evil crew never came back. They just saw him come out of a portal, then cried uncle and gave up. What's worse than the pure existence of this game, though, is how Activision actually had the audacity to sell the first DLC pack on 360 and PS3 for $10, which is mind-boggling. Yes, while it is funny to see more of our favorite demonic being and his three friends that had a run-in with Shang Tsung stomping around in their playground, they really should have given this out for free, because just look at it. It seriously is bitch-made behavior to sell DLC for something of Black Ops 3's quality. Plus, after DLC 1 came out, the game was never updated again, so whatever bugs or bad design choices that were fixed later on didn't happen on 360. Players were just stuck looking at live-action watercolor paintings, shooting the shit with what I imagine was a very small portion of people in multiplayer lobbies, until they got bored enough to go visit their last-gen Richthofen shrine to remove the Game Boy Color from the mantle, allowing them to re-experience a butcher shop's behind-the-scenes moment with Mortal Kombat 4. I had no idea this was a thing until a few days ago. I kinda assumed we would have stopped doing this after the first two, cause, you know, they're horrible. Putting a fighting game on a console as bare bones as a Game Boy is basically going to a zoo trying to rip out a tiger's tooth as a testament of your power. It's a battle you have no chance of winning. But what makes Mortal Kombat 4 more of a debacle is how this entry is when the series started moving into 3D, which is a task that is actually unachievable on the Game Boy, so they had to resort to using the expected 2D gameplay that everyone would know and hate, stomaching hardly responsive controls, hardly allowing you to do anything. Breathing, blinking, it's all off limits, forcing you to resort to spamming B, delivering a hurricane of kicks, waiting for your opponent to topple over, to then repeatedly beat on the ragdolls till you reach Shinnok, coming off like Mama Bear unleashed him into the winter storm to wait at the bus stop in his puffy coat. Upon his demise, you get your wall of text, some of them still confusing me as much as the in-game ooze we're accustomed to. When I finished my tournament with Tanya, and I do need to give her credit, she won an entire fighting tournament with no nose, mouth, or eyes. So her ragdoll ass deserves some praise for persevering through all of this. I got told upon Shinnok Shinnok's destruction, fooling Liu Kang into thinking of her as an ally. Tanya leads him into a trap as Quan Chi and Shinnok put an end to the Earth's last and mightiest warrior. When I just killed both of those guys. So what, we're friends now? Gotta love Mortal Kombat logic. Now, obviously, this Mortal Kombat 4 port is nowhere close to as rotten as Mortal Kombat Advance. That thing is fucking disgusting. People have gotten restraining orders against it. Nobody wants it in their vicinity. But I will just never understand the rationality behind bringing the Mortal Kombat series to the distance on Game Boy outside of the age-old classic reasoning of shoveling up a few gold pieces from local villagers so a corporate suit can leave the US, fly over to Japan, experiencing some of the bizarro, weird shit they have going on over there, like Half-Life 2 Survivor, that had you ride upon the throne of a strange-looking contraption, playing a stripped-down version for one of Valve's magic spells casted from the pages of a grimoire. It opens up with everyone's favorite alcoholic uncle going on a spiel again. Rise and shine, Mr. Freeman. Do you have morning wood? If so, we're going to have an under-the-belt sword fight in the bathroom. We've heard it, we've seen it a million times now. We then enter our little level, shoving 400 tutorials down our throat, telling you how to move, how to shoot, how to turn, everything you could possibly need, really. Where next, you go killing, stampeding through segmented pieces of Half-Life 2 levels, being timed while doing so. I find this to be a very peculiar predicament. Why is this a game that was stuck in arcades? It's not to say Survivor is a dilapidated husk of an experience. You're playing Half-Life 2, so it's not. The game is just nowhere near as enjoyable as the real thing, since you aren't able to indulge yourself into the story and world, which is the part of Half-Life 2 that is praised the most. People to this day, eons later, are still theory crafting about how the G-Man folds his sheets and what brand of sugary cereal he eats, which is theory crafting that is not possible with Survivor. You only get little cutscenes in between levels that don't say much of anything. So I find it kinda hard to believe a person would sit there watching Mike Wazowski cousin casting spells and seriously take in what is transpiring here. I'm assuming that's the reason we have a multiplayer as well. That would have been the highlight for sure. I don't know if there was any online connectivity for Survivor, but I would see this as the main intrigue for any person who stepped into an arcade where this was present. Either way, creating an arcade version of Half-Life is a move I never thought would make it past the drawing board. You'd think the pitch would be treated like Sorry, whacking that bitch off the board, sending the recessive gene idea back where it came from. Not many people in the West were aware of its existence for quite some time, since the machinery never made its way over here. And what's even more special is that Survivor isn't the only trap card Valve had stashed away in their top hat. The West was going to get the princess treatment, it just never released, with Half-Life on Dreamcast, that I did try to play to no avail. Regardless of what I did, I was stuck staring into the dark abyss, getting a visual for how the players back then felt in real time if they were aware this was going to release in the first place. Although, I couldn't imagine it would be the most surreal, off-the-cuff port of a game ever, comparing to the likes of GTA on Game Boy, and it surely wouldn't be as exciting to society either. Any and all children would love to have the ability to kill, easily accessible from a colored-ass rectangle in their pocket that is as impressive as it is raunchy. I wouldn't expect anything else from a game made by a bug. Unsurprisingly, it's stylized the same way the original GTA games were, but even if those original titles happen to be 3D, the Game Boy Color version would still probably be this way, and it works really well for a quick under-the-covers wrestling match of a video game. The map is really large for a Game Boy game, with a majority of it being empty, since the console, of course, wouldn't be able to handle mounds of cretins aimlessly wallowing in the streets. There's barely any cars for that matter. So I guess you would need to treat GTA 1 on Game Boy as a simple technical marvel due to you essentially using it as a walking simulator, following a red arrow around, trying to do missions, hoping they work properly. For me, the two I tried to do resulted in me getting stuck, unable to move, because I made the mistake of trying to get inside of my car that that I stole. Then the other wanted me to get inside of a taxi that must have had Master Hand gripping the wheels from a digital dungeon that I couldn't see or interact with, forcing me to jump in the water and kill myself. Bubba is apparently made out of baking soda. Water instantly dissolved him into mush, transporting the guy to GTA 2 on Game Boy Color that is honestly a lot more spectacular than the first. I don't know what they started feeding the first cartridge for it to inevitably turn into a full-on monster like this, where the player has actual traffic to see, cops try to chase you down to the best of their abilities when you start rampaging the sidewalk, and they stuck in the gang system that was added in the sequel. It really brings in the expectations of what people initially believed the first one would be. You can really run around becoming what a keyboard warrior truly believes they are and fucking dominate society with little to no issues, easily being the highlight of the whole thing. I'm not really sure if players would actually care to be doing missions on a Game Boy, so allowing the stank-ass gamer to go on massive killing sprees till either their battery dies or they get the feeling of 1,000 wasps in their eyes from the Game Boy not having a backlight is definitely the best move you could make. You got a reasonable enough translation of the early series here that undoubtedly worked better than most other handheld adaptations did at the time. And that's the greatest part about these strange ports. You really never know if they're going to be terrible or not. I'm positive the knee-jerk reaction after that, "Wow, I can play my favorite computer game on Game Boy. Mommy, please buy it or I'll put a frag grenade under your pillow," subsides, was probably thoughts of how these GTA games are going to be gum melted onto a car's tire, when that's not the case, with the second game at least. I guarantee a similar sentiment was erupted into the world with Guitar Hero on DS. You see it, then get filled with confusion, wondering how they could fit an entire guitar inside of a DS cartridge. Then you see the whirligig you need to stick in the Game Boy slot, allowing it all to make sense. Upon sticking that bitch in, you'll realize how well the game could actually play in theory. In my case, I'm not able to experience anything aside from excruciating pain in my wrist, because you need to bend your shit in the most unorthodox manner to play with a controller through emulation, thanks to not being able to change the controls. I got the spider hand thing going on the controller while I'm trying to scratch that shit on the screen with the mouse simultaneously. All that deep-throated oohing and ahhing these people on stage are releasing from their mouths would start coming out of the player for real if they played this for longer than an hour. The pain from trying to play make-pretend guitar is almost unparalleled when it comes to gaming. However, if you look at any of the 3 Guitar Hero games purely from the perspective of using the peripheral on a physical console, it presumably would become addicting once you get habituated to fingering the GBA slot. I do know that another game called Band Hero took this situation a step further by adding a DS drum set into the mix. I'm not sure how well that plays, but considering how rancid emulating the little peripheral is, I cannot imagine what sort of mental asylum, hellish landscape would need to be traversed in order for that to work properly. And I really don't want to deal with that mental asylum peaked at 4th grade recess behavior unless it's at Dixmoor Hospital from Manhunt 2, specifically the Wii version that I had no idea existed. It's kinda weird seeing a video game that was banned from sale in certain countries due to the violence getting released on a Nintendo console that was heavily marketed towards families and children. That's literally all you ever saw for ads with this thing. A family being paid to pretend they're having fun playing Mario Party, cheesing to where you think their face will be stuck that way permanently. So the idea of Rockstar executing this EX super move was not expected by a soul who walks this earth. It's the first time I've ever played Manhunt 2, and I was really hyped up watching the protagonist reliving his visitation to the Travis Scott concert that radiated an earthquake-level rumble, screaming in excitement, to then be urinated on, then have a zoo animal in a diaper hurl his caca at me from behind a cage. The environment is built right there and then, which is probably the strongest suit for this port specifically. The fact you need to shadow box with the Wiimote and nunchuck to crunch an enemy's skull in or cut them up with your weaponry sort of makes the experience a lot more grimy me than just mashing square to beat on someone. My only issue with it is that I have a broken, cheap, sweatshop-ass nunchuck controller that disconnects when I try existing, so tearing through people was a lot more frustrating than it should have been, but I did try to deal with it. I will say, nothing made me happier than when I finally stumbled into the ogre who threw his poop at me. He tried his best to loop me around, but there is no way in fuck I was letting him escape my wrath. It's unfortunate I wasn't able to pull an execution off, I think being the primary reason as to why Manhunt is seen as this forbidden game that shouldn't be seen by anyone under the age of 40. On the Wii, they were toned down quite a bit to the point you can hardly tell what is happening, making there not much of a reason to pull them off. Instead of a glorious kill, you just see a washed out screen of gray and black. So instead of wasting my time trying to pull those off, I just existed in this realm with my social media rotted brain, world-hating mentality, slaughtering the individuals who wanted me dead, enjoying the depressing world I'm contained in. It was as fun as it could be with the handicap I was tainted with, where the simplest tasks became impossible. This Atlantic garbage island forged nunchuck ruined not only this, but my time with another quirky Wii port, Dead Rising Chop Till You Drop. I never hear anyone talk about this version, and from the bits and pieces I played, it came off as pretty nasty. The game forces you to spend a large chunk of time simply learning how to saddle up on the esoteric control scheme, trying to handle Big Franklin, wiping out zombies by performing a wiggle wiggle on your Wiimote, while simultaneously being prepared to point the Wiimote to aim your gun. It's pretty awkward, but I was initially willing to study under the learning tree, trying to see what treasures could be scooped out from under Dead Rising's surface, but I was repeatedly cursed to see Frank running in circles or moonwalking, and I eventually ripped the wire out of the nunchuck because I got mad, and now I can't play it anymore. I genuinely hope one day I see that bum-ass controller on the top of a garbage fire. Thankfully, that torment does go away when you remove the wart of a problem from your life, so you can go do something like using Max Payne on GBA as a source of anger management, murdering a plethora of goons as you traverse from level to level in this weirdly smooth game, considering what console it's being played on. For a Game Boy Advance title, all these character animations are laxative level. The core action shooting gunplay is by far the best feeling gameplay I've ever experienced on the purple brick. I think the only piece of this cake that would fully give someone the runs is the isometric angle that makes your aiming and moving much harder to do than it would be in real life. Other than that, it's quite impressive how nice Maxwell Payne translated over to a handheld console with the power level of a hamster wheel. Unfortunately, I can't speak on whether this game follows the story of the real thing. This is the first time I've ever played a Max Payne title, so these comic book text boxes could easily be yanking my chain while paving the cement. All I can say is I left my boot print in the blood of faceless pixelated creatures semi-enjoying myself. And that's what matters, right? The fun. The streets simply want entertainment, which is exactly what life simulators such as The Sims do for people. They can immerse themselves into this landscape of sentient Chia pets who speak an ancient language not spoken in modern tongue, with the player having the ability to purchase over $1,000 in DLC to become the big kahuna of the Electronic Arts jungle. What I find interesting about this series, though, is that there's hardly any true narrative-driven titles where you step in the shoes of a sim, aside from a few of the mobile games like Sims 2 on PSP. For reasons unknown, they decided to stray far away from the traditional gameplay the series is known for. Here, they let the player create their salivating hunk to actually control them, engaging with wildlife in a place called Strange Town, usually witnessing weird-ass underworld behavior. In a very short time frame, you stumble into a garage after your car breaks down. That said garage disappears. A lady that is having what might as well be a mental breakdown sells you her mansion for $500. You have a cop bring you to your newly acquired home after you grab donuts out of a trash can. You then discover the house you bought is haunted, and and then you do your best to steal someone's maybe human wife afterwards. It's Sims magic. I'm kinda shocked this series never tried doing this more often outside of the mobile market. This is a lot more interactive than a typical Sims game. You got jobs you can do that are mini games to rake in fat stacks. You're also able to level up your skills by snooping around other people's homes. Then of course you got house customization and the ability to become a walking, talking evil totem, treating everyone like their maggot remains wiped on the pavement. My goal with my clearly attractive character who could decapitate someone with his jawline was to be the most disgusting human who's ever walked the earth. Everyone is beneath him unless it's for his own gain. He doesn't clean himself, doesn't change his clothes. People get exactly what they see. If they don't like it, they can consult with the ghosts in my music room. This game is clearly not going to be for everyone. It's very slow paced, but at least it did its job for the fanatics of Sims who wanted to bring this series on the go. Either way, regardless of how strange it is to see a few of these spells be casted, it's nice that there was an attempt made. Obviously, not all of them are a grand slam. One look at Black Ops 3 on Xbox 360 speaks more volumes than any grouping of words ever could, but we blessingly have it to look back on for pure entertainment. Thank you so much for boosting in the back of the map for a nuke to drop this heater onto us, Activision. I want to get your company's name tattooed on my Johnson because of it. As always, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on these electrifying ports, like if you think they're off the chain, or if there's other ports you know of that make zero sense whatsoever, yet they were still ported anyways. Let me know down in the comments. Big ups to all of our channel members who go above and beyond each and every month, generously supporting the channel even further. If you would like to join them to get early access to content, be sure to hit the join button right next to the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, take very good care of yourselves, and I hope to see you all again in the next video.